Welcome, and thank you for joining me. We are starting off with a full card on our journey through the tarot. I broke down this card before when I covered the 7 cards of the Seeker. However, we're going to go more in depth on this card and compare it to more modern interpretations. The number 0 itself represents no thing. This is pure potential, and while no thing may seem as though it would be better represented by a blank sheet of paper, the full card does represent that potentiality very well. According to Jason Lauderhand, this card doesn't really belong with the rest. Instead, it is above and apart from the rest of the tarot. We see an androgynous figure standing on a cliff with a small dog behind him. While this figure can easily be male or female, we will refer to it as him in this video. The yellow in the background represents air. Paul Foster Case also connects the color to Uranus. The white sun is considered the sun behind the sun, and Paul Foster Case describes it as this higher something is an impersonal power, manifesting as the limitless energy radiated to the planet of world systems without number, streaming to them from their respective suns. Page 31. The green wreath in the fool's hair represents the plant kingdom. The red feather in the fool's wreath represents the animal kingdom. The color red represents the energy of Mars and desire. The yellow hair represents the element of air. The full face is northwest, a direction that is associated with the unknown, and the start of a creative process. Page 32. On his shirt are 10 yellow wheels with red spokes, and around the wheel are 7 green trefoils. Again, yellow represents air or thought. The 8 red spokes represent the Mars desire that sets everything into motion. The 7 trefoils represent the 7 rays of spiritual unfoldment. The 10 wheels are the Sephiroth on the Kabbalah tree of life. The yellow circle with 3 flames on the fool's right breast represents the 3 states of consciousness: higher self, subconscious, and conscious. On the fool's left shoulder is a gold 8-pointed star, and close to it is the lunar crescent. This is the sun and moon. These are the 2 main modes of consciousness. Underneath the outer shirt is a white shirt and a black shirt in the middle. The white shirt represents his innocence, while the black shirt represents ignorance. Paul Foster Case refers to the staff the fool carries on his shoulder as a wand. Again, we have a symbol for air, or thoughts. On the wallet that hangs from the wand is the all-seeing eye of Horus, and 10 stitches, again representing the Sephiroth on the tree of life. The eagle on the wallet represents the evolved form of the zodiacal sign of Scorpio. The white rose represents innocence free of desire and passion. 7 circular ornaments hang from the girdle of his waist, representing the 7 planets. Case says that these are the 12 ornaments in total, and representing the 12 constellations as well. The fool wears olive-colored hose, which represents Earth and Malkuth on the Kabbalah tree of life. The yellow shoe again refers to air, and we are reminded that this entire image is merely a thought form. The white Maltese dog represents the analytical conscious mind, along with the ego. The fool himself, according to Paul Foster Case, represents the higher self. According to Waite, the fool is the state of the first emanation, which is Kether on the Kabbalah tree of life. Essentially, what Paul Foster Case implies is that the fool is a soul with no prior incarnation, departing from the spiritual realm into physical material reality. Also, it's important to know for the minor arcana that Paul Foster Case connects the wand to a representation of will. When it comes to Waite, we find a few differences that stand out. First, Waite places this card with the World card, because it is equivalent to the World card. Now, the World card is the final card of the major arcana of the tarot. The World card, however, depicts someone that has walked the path of the Seeker during an incarnation, and is the master of reality. I covered the World card in my Path of the Seeker playlist, so I'll place that video in the description box below. The 2 cards may be equivalent, but they are very different. Waite says another name for the card is Jester, and it is important to think of the role of the Jester in a king's court. The Jester was an extension of the king, mocking people of the court for him, because the king could not, and making sure the king didn't take himself too seriously. The Jester is often depicted as lacking intelligence, a madman, or a simpleton, yet in truth he had to be the most cunning in order to mock the court and king without ending up in the stocks. Case and Waite's cards are nearly identical aside from the handbag on the wand. Waite hints that small details are important by referencing the clasp and the image on the sack on the end of the wand. That image on Waite's card is the head of an eagle, representing Scorpio. The clasp itself is too small to be certain, but may be an upside-down triangle, representing water, that is the element of Scorpio. In a way, Scorpio represents the full incarnation process. We go from the higher perspective of the soul to the limited vision of the scorpion when we're in the human body, and reborn similar to the phoenix when we realize that we are a spiritual being having a physical experience. Waite explains, many symbols of the instituted mysteries are summarized in this card. Waite also explains that the reason he places it in his deck with a world card is because they are equivalent, That alone can be a wonderful meditation because the Fool is the inner self at the start of our human journey, and the World card is the mastery of physical material reality. Alright, let's look at the modern versions of the card. With the Light Seer Tarot, we see a woman who's definitely not androgynous. She's dark hair, she wears a yellow dress, she's tipping over the edge of a cliff with a purple crystal generator in her outstretched hand, and the staff in the other. Below her is the sacred geometry of the Seed of Life. Here are the pieces from Cassian's guidebook that really shows the essence of how she approaches this card. The journey of the soul begins with a single step, and you may find yourself on the edge of an epic journey, and trust your intuition as you swan dive into the seed of potential. When it comes to the purple generator, my first thought is amethyst. It's a curious choice over a rose. Generators direct energy, and amethyst is a detoxifying mineral related to perception. Purple, at the very least, represents royalty, but has taken on a general spiritual meaning. Unlike the Fool of Weight and Case, this Fool seems to be very conscious of the direction of the action they are taking. The purple generator and the staff could be summed up as directed willpower, which is different from Weight and Case's Fool. The red beads on the necklace may represent passion, as does the red in Waite's card, so that is good. And there are 3, so perhaps she's hinting at the conscious, subconscious, and superconscious, all symbolized in Waite and Case's cards. The yellow dress clearly connects it to the element of air. After meditating on the strange whirlpool, like depiction of the Seed of Life below the cliff, I do like the idea. Whether you see this card as the soul incarnating to physical material reality or the inspiration of a new ideal, it does seem to work. Then there's Colette Baron-Reid's Good Tarot. This one is very different from the others. The figure is of a fairy with golden hair emerging from the space blowing a French horn, surrounded by vegetation, before an ephemeral archway, a golden crown of vegetation, and 2 dragonflies. Dragonflies represent change, transformation, adaptability, and self-realization. Colette uses enthusiasm as a synonym for the Fool, and these 2 phrases stood out to me. I can take a risk and trust that with faith anything is possible, and this is a time when I have learning that I am a spiritual being having a human experience. Page 2. Originally I was stumped when looking at the symbolism of the art on this card, yet there are some similarities to Waite and Case's Fool card. Like Chris-Anne's Fool, there is not as much symbolism. The first thing I noted was the yellow hair, yellow clothes, and what seems to be yellow skin of the fairy. That connects with the yellow of Waite's Fool, representing air. Instead of a black decorated garment representing ignorance with a white garment representing purity beneath, the fairy is wearing an ill-fitting white garment. If we apply the previous reasoning, you might say that the white garment is purity because of ignorance or naivety. That it doesn't fit neatly hints at ignorance, yet that explanation seems to be a bit of a stretch. The barely visible archway does represent a new beginning, doors representing the ending of one thing and the start of a new experience, even if we are only going into another room in our own home. Coming from the darkness of space could represent ignorance too, or source itself. She seems to emerge from vegetation, representing that kingdom, symbolized by the wreath and weights. The wreath of what looks like wheat could be seen this way, but it represents a different phase of life. Typically, the harvest is seen as the Middle Ages instead of youth. But the animal kingdom is not represented, the feather and weights. Maybe the French horn could represent the animal kingdom as it descends from the hunting horn. The horn was used by hunters to signal the elements of the hunt. Now the knockoff cheap brand says this card represents folly, mania, and extravagance. I've never read that as a meaning for this card, so I found that amusing. All 4 cards share the color yellow. The soul, or Ein Sof, is best represented by the element of air, symbolized by the yellow color. This is in alignment with the indigenous tradition of the medicine wheel. This, in many ways, connects to the absolute unbounded oneness, and the idea that all life is made up of consciousness. Lauderhand explains that the Fool precedes and is in between all of the other cards. Again, Waite places this card, even though the number 0, before the World card. The staff, traditionally called a wand in the tarot, is in 3 of the cards. The wand, representative of air, is will. Some say that the act of creation itself was pure will, and the act of souls incarnating on earth was through sheer will. Edgar Cayce describes souls as pushing themselves into physical material reality to explore it when they first came across this part of creation. The cliff is in 3 of the cards, and is an interesting symbol that is not discussed by Paul Foster Case or Waite. However, if you're going on a hike and stood in such a place, you know that it gives you perspective. All of us have a perspective, and while the Fool doesn't have the bird's eye view of the eagle depicted on his pack because it is skewed, he does have a higher perspective than the scorpion, the other symbol for Scorpio. The vegetable kingdom is depicted in 3 of the cards. The vegetable kingdom represents a non-threatening wildness. Waits and Cases Full cards so perfectly depict the soul fresh from spirit, about to be encapsulated in the human body, the absolute unbounded oneness descending into physical material reality. The card even has the strutting swagger of the letter Aleph. I personally agree with Case that the major arcana of the tarot is connected and perhaps based on the Hebrew alphabet. Each letter has a personality. Chris Ann's symbology is very different. The Fool she depicts is a bit more in peril, as she seems to knowingly fall into a whirlpool of the sacred geometry of the seat of life. Colette's Fool has a bit more of a summoning element that is more reminiscent of the magician to me. The latter two, based more on reading the cards as an oracle than a depiction of the soul's journey in material reality, does make sense. Based on near-death experiences in the past life regressions, the soul is full of buoyant optimism and enthusiasm when coming into life. The very essence of the Fool is one of initiating force on the level of the psyche. That is why it belongs to the element of air. Consciousness, even imagination, is like the wind in that it cannot be seen, but it can be perceived. As I explained when covering the medicine wheel, all of physical creation starts off in consciousness, in our mind. The design of an airplane started off in someone's imagination, and now thousands take flight as a material fact. Walt Disney described it best in his Carousel of Progress. Every decade he describes a new innovative idea that will never work, but then it does, and huge progress was made. All good journeys start in the mind as a seed of an idea. Ample amount of research in near-death experience and past life regression sessions say that the soul comes into a physical material reality with a plan. There is some goal, usually personal development, that they wish to obtain. Sometimes it's achieved, but always the process of knowing thyself is accomplished. Many claim, but few achieve self-actualization because they cannot observe themselves or their experiences objectively as a stranger would. I think of the Fool card as being similar to an infant, filled with endless potential. And I believe in reincarnation, so I do believe we are born with pre-existing qualities. The knapsack and case is in Waite's depiction. Seeing what symbols Colette and Chris Ann decide to take into their new version of the tarot and what they left behind is a fascinating study. In the everyday world of oracle readings, it makes sense that it represents the inspiration of an idea. To reduce the concept down to that, however, and even worse to the superstitious knockoff version of folly, does water the original meaning of this card down significantly. Waite's tarot was provocative because well-done art or pictures provoke a response in the observer. I find it really interesting that Colette connects the Fool to realizing that you are a spiritual being having a human experience, as this card depicts the underlying essence of life. As for the androgynous being, that does not mean that gender does not exist. Instead, we need to be balanced in masculine, active, and feminine, receptive qualities, though we are naturally imbued with one quality or another. Well, that is all that I have for you in this video. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown of the Fool card and look forward to sharing more with you. Bye for now.